Welcome to CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. I'm Mercedes Schlapp. And as you all know, we launched the CPAC Center for Combating Human Trafficking. It's been an incredible, really policy center, and it got jump-started and has led to a lot of great work. And someone who's really taken the lead on this issue is our next guest, Congressman Russell Fry from the great state of South Carolina. Thank you for joining me.
Great to be here, Mercedes. Thanks for having me.
So I want to jump right in on this human trafficking bill that you all introduced late in January. It's a Trafficking Survivors Relief Act. Tell us why you did it and what's in this bill.
Well, it's really important. I mean, 47 states have already done something similar in their state law. And what we have right now in the federal component is really a failure of help to victims. And what this bill does, and it's bipartisan, which is incredible and supported by a ton of organizations, prosecutors, victims' rights organizations, CPAC, of course. But what it does is it allows victims of human trafficking to tell their story. And then it would provide an affirmative defense for any charge that they may receive. Oftentimes, as you know, people are picked up for prostitution or nonviolent crimes like that, and they go right back into the world as soon as they're out that they were in. And this allows them to correct the record, to show that they are true victims of human trafficking, and to get those charges eliminated.
So I visited Letitia's house, which is out in Williamsburg, Virginia, and we were having these conversations, and one of the ladies obviously was talking to us about how these sex trafficking victims, let's say they're with a pimp or one of these sex traffickers, they're caught up in a crime, then they get the felony. The sex trafficking victim gets the felony, and then when they get out, they can't get a job. Like they can get a job like at Five Guys or one of the restaurants, but like they can't become a nail technician or like a hairdresser or anything that has to do with licensing. So I think you create this vicious cycle where there's these mental, the mental and physical pain that they're going through. They're also dealing with financial distress, and it's about really giving them a second chance. What's your sense, like, as you're talking to these areas where there's people that are victims of sex trafficking, what have they told you?
Well, they love it. I met one the other day, and she said, this is going to absolutely help me. And she's a big advocate right now for victims of human trafficking. She does some policy work, but she was caught up in that world. And like you said, it's very difficult, one, to come forward and tell your story. And what I think is really important here, too, is prosecutors love this bill. And the reason why they do is that it encourages people to come forward and tell their story, but allows you to get to the real problem, which is the traffickers themselves.
Right.
And so if prosecutors are able to identify who these people are and go destroy these rings that they have, that's really good for our communities, and that's really good to erase the scourge of human trafficking.
Now, what are the chances a bill is going to be, is going to move quickly through the House? I know that, Speaker Johnson and the crew, they have a lot on their plate in trying to deal with the Senate. But do you think this has a good chance of passing, especially considering the bipartisan support that you've received?
I do. I think it's got a great shot. It's bipartisan. It's actually bicameral. I think there's some Senate counterparts on both sides of the aisle that will be filing a similar bill. And so I think that, the brush fire campaign is continuing to build. Obviously, there were a lot of organizations on Capitol Hill last week talking about this, and they asked, well, how can we be helpful to this bill? So we'll get in front of your members, get it in front of the members of Congress so they can see it and join this movement.
So, Congressman, let me ask you this. So we're dealing with what looks to be the falling apart of the border bill. Just you look at that border bill and it's a disaster, yet you're continuing to see the influx of illegal aliens coming through the border. Matt and I were just in Arizona 2 weeks ago, and I got to tell you, between the Trump wall, there was the Biden gap, and they were all coming in through that. We encountered dozens of illegal immigrants coming through the border. When we spoke to them, they said they were coming for work. It's not because of political persecution. What happens next? Like, what needs to happen to try to gain control of what's happening in the border?
One, I think, and the House is right, we're going to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. I think it's not a fix-all, but it starts the process of fixing this issue. Two, I think President Biden, has all the authority that he needs right now to fix the problem. The border, if you look at the data, was never more secure than it was under President Trump. And if you ask people on the border, which I'm sure that you did now, it's never been more unsafe.
Right.
And so the president has authority now, and trying to force his hand to fix it, I think, is something that House Republicans should do. And then third and final, look, House Republicans passed a phenomenal bill back in May, H.R. 2, the Secure the Border Act. The Senate needs to get on board with and do this. We don't need to put lipstick on a pig. We need to actually fix the problem. And when the Secretary of Homeland Security for Obama says 1,000 migrants a day is a crisis, here we have 10,000 a day. And the border bill, which was a disaster, was compromised at 5, and they would shut it down. It's just a non-starter for us in the House. We want true border security. We want to actually fix the problem, and we need to get serious about it.
I want to play for you what Senator Chris Murphy said last week regarding the illegal immigrants. Pretty much that's his goal, to help those people in need. So let me play that for you.
The negotiation didn't have a path to citizenship. It was entirely on their terms in order to get Ukraine funding, right?
Well, I mean, Chris, that's been a failed play for 20 years. So right. You are right that has been the Democratic strategy for 30 years, maybe. And it has failed to deliver for the people we care about most, the undocumented Americans that are in this country. This is also not 2013 any longer when we ran that play last.
So, Congressman, I mean, he's basically saying put the illegals before Americans. I mean, it just shows what the Senate Democrats and even the House Democrats are pushing for. What's your reaction?
Well, look, I mean, they have not been serious about this since the beginning. I mean, in my first hearing as a freshman congressman, Jerry Nadler said that we were imagining a border crisis. Well, right. Every month is a new record in the wrong way for the amount of migrants and fentanyl and human trafficking that are coming across our southern border. And so I'm glad that they think that it's now a problem, but let's get real with the solutions and stop putting lipstick on a pig. And that's why this bill was not a non-starter for me.
So I think, one of the things that people, don't necessarily, they try not to bring it up or they don't even want to deal with it, is that the human traffickers and these drug cartels have become in charge of our border. I mean, when we were in Arizona, we were near towns where drug cartels have literally taken over these towns. So like, in addition to, okay, we got to stop, it's Biden doing the executive actions, but I almost feel at this point like it is a war against the drug cartels and the human traffickers. They're raping girls. They call it rape trees, where they put like their bras and their panties up on trees as trophies. It's disgusting. We talk about also the NGOs, that they're literally processing one illegal immigrant after another and getting them on planes. These people are not being vetted. Is there anything that can be done on the congressional level, whether it's, starting with the hearing, as you guys have done effectively, to really bring awareness to these issues?
Yeah, I think the NGOs themselves are a problem. I mean, I think at their core, they try to do good work, but here's the thing. It's a shell game that we're continuing to prop up and fund these activities. We got to get a handle on that, too. And to your point, when we have a secure border, when we have one under a new administration, I think we can get serious about this. And I think we're trying to get serious now, but it is very difficult in this political terrain to do that. But what is really encouraging to me, Mercedes, is that the American people are waking up. I hear from people who are Republicans, Independents, right, Democrats, and they're fed up with this. And they look at this and go, well, wait a second. This isn't just like a small problem. This is a massive, massive problem. It's affecting our communities. 300 Americans die every day from fentanyl poisoning. It affects every aspect of our country. And these guys are just not doing anything. They're done with it. They're absolutely done with it.
So the Senate seems to be moving forward with an emergency aid bill for Ukraine and Israel. This is obviously after they could not pass what would have been that, not only foreign aid bill, but the border bill. What can we expect to happen in the House with this bill?
Well, I think the House has been pretty clear. We want separate bills on these things. We want separate discussions. The administration wants, a catch-all, and even the border security stuff, the monies that they have in there don't truly go to border security. It goes to these NGOs to continue to process this massive amount of people. And so for me, I've got some serious reservations about the Senate plan. I think a lot of conservatives do. And so the Speaker has been thus far pretty clear that it is a non-starter in the House.
Now let's go to the South Carolina rally. I know you were just with President Trump this past weekend. Tell us about the rally. Tell us about the mood of President Trump when you had a chance to see him.
He was in such a good mood. He loves the state. I mean, the area that he was in just this past weekend was an area in 2016 that he completely overperformed. I mean, he did phenomenally well. So he was in a really good mood. And there were 5,000 or 6,000 people inside the basketball arena. There were another 5 or 6 that couldn't even get in. So the campaign team had to, set up all these jumbotrons so that people could watch. And it was a great day. Look, things are heating up in South Carolina, but this area and this state are fertile Trump country, and I expect that they will continue to be that way through February 24th.
So, I mean, here we are where, I've basically called for Nikki Haley to drop out. I think it's time to unify the party. I think Republicans are spending way too much money trying to, basically kill each other off as opposed to defeating the enemy here. What do you think is going through her mind right now? Like, why do you think she's staying in knowing that she's going to be, I just think so dramatically defeated in South Carolina?
Yeah, it's perplexing to me too, Mercedes. I mean, you just lost in Nevada to nobody by 30 points.
Yes.
You're coming to South Carolina, your home state, where polling continues to show very favorable results for President Trump, and that she's not really gaining traction. She has a base in South Carolina that have been with her, but beyond that, it is President Trump's state, and he's going to win here. And so I, like you, even people who were sympathetic to the former governor or personally like her, they're coming to me going, why is she still in this? It doesn't make sense. Why are we spending money attacking each other when we need to focus on November?
So I got to ask you, because the Robert Hur report came out last week and basically said, look, we're not going to go forward with charges because this is like an elderly man with poor memory. I think if I were like a Democrat within the comms office in the White House, I'd be completely stressed out knowing that this is all, they're trying to defend President Biden as being mentally, in good shape. When you looked at the report, what was your sense? Do you think the Democrats are definitely in panic mode at this point?
Well, I think they are. You look at even their news outlets that have done so well at kind of covering up the big problems of this administration. They're kind of scratching their heads right now. And I think a lot of people are recognizing within the party, and they don't say it often. They don't say it out loud often, but they're recognizing the mental faculties of this administration aren't there, that he is in no position to govern the country. We've been saying that for a very long time. Forget what you think about his policies. Look at the ability to actually govern a country. And you're seeing that play out on the world stage right now. You're seeing that with attacks in Ukraine from Russia. You're seeing that with a very hostile China toward Taiwan. You're seeing that in the Hamas attacks on October 7th, unfortunately, in Israel. And the perception of our strength on the world stage is waning, and that is because of the waning mental faculties of this president. I
got to ask you, because when we're looking at what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, and obviously I think there's been so much billions of dollars spent in Ukraine, but is there any movement towards peace talks? It's so interesting. We have these neighbors. One of them literally has a huge Ukraine flag, and then on top of that, lights that are blue and yellow. You can't. It's like Christmas lights. And then on top of that, they have a sign that says full ceasefire in Gaza. I'm like, okay, so ceasefire in Gaza, but what's the end game for Russia and Ukraine?
No, I think that's kind of the interesting quagmire that Democrats find themselves in. Look, no one disputes that to me, Russia's a bad actor just by invading another country. But the problem that conservatives have, including myself, is We don't have a mission. We don't have an exit strategy. We don't know what victory looks like. That has not been told to the American people. And we don't have a full accounting of how monies are being spent. If we're going to be helpful on the world stage, and the United States always has been, we kind of need to know that. And that's really the role of Congress, and where this administration has sidestepped Congress and sidestepped the American people, is they're not being transparent or forthcoming about what this looks like and what an American victory, whatever that is, what that might show. And so for us, we're very concerned about continuing to spend money in a country when we don't know what the end game is.
One of the things I wanted to add, going back to the border situation, just last question here, is that with the Mayorkas, obviously you had four Republicans, including Mike Gallagher, which I thought was kind of a shocker, voting against impeachment of Mayorkas. Are they going to be able to sway some of these votes?
Yeah, well, one of the four votes procedurally moved from yes to no so that they could bring it back up. Steve Scalise, who's been going through some treatments right now, is expected to return this week. And so upon his return, and assuming that no one else is out for sickness or a bruised shin or whatever, we will have the votes to do what we need to do.
And then who's your pick? I was going to say Super Bowl, but that already passed. How about vice president pick for President Trump? Any guess?
I don't know. There's so many rumors out there. So I have no idea what President Trump is thinking or who he's going to land on. But I do know one thing, that the people, including Democrats, man on the street stuff, I've had so many people tell me that they have a little bit of buyer's remorse and that they are ready for a change in the White House.
Good. We need it. I think it's time. Congressman Russell Fry, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks, Mercedes. Appreciate it.
And thank you all for watching CPAC Now, America Uncanceled. Remember, we're a week and a half away from CPAC. Get your tickets now at cpac.org, and thanks for watching.